The discovery. Dr. Elena Santos stood in the crimson dust of Mars, staring at symbols that shouldn't exist. The holographic overlay from her suit's advanced imaging system highlighted the delicate etchings that wrapped around the recently unearthed monolith, casting an ethereal blue glow against the rust-colored rock. After 15 years of xenorchaeological research, she had thought nothing could surprise her anymore. She was wrong. "Control, are you seeing this?" Her voice carried a tremor that had nothing to do with the thin Martian atmosphere. "The symbols match the patterns we found in the Europa ice caves." Exactly match. The delay between Mars and Earth felt eternal. Finally, her earpiece crackled. "Confirmed, Dr. Santos. Pattern match is 100%. That shouldn't be possible." Elena traced her gloved hand over the ancient surface, feeling the perfectly carved grooves beneath her fingers. The monolith had been buried under 30 meters of Martian regolith, untouched for millions of years. Yet here it was, bearing identical markings to discoveries found throughout the solar system: Europa, Venus's upper atmosphere, and now Mars. "The translation matrix is running," she reported, watching as her suit's AI processed the complex symbols. "But something's different here. The arrangement. It's not just a warning this time. It's coordinates." Her team had discovered the first set of symbols 5 years ago, hidden in the crystalline caves beneath Europa's ice sheets. Back then, they thought they'd found evidence of a single ancient alien civilization. But as identical markings appeared across the solar system, a more unsettling pattern emerged. These weren't the remnants of one civilization. They were messages left by many, all saying the same thing. The translation matrix chimed, and Elena's breath caught in her throat. The holographic display projected the decoded text before her eyes. "Guardians, maintain DHEVIL. Coordinates FOLO. AP grow HH with chaotion. The D must remain sealed. Control, are you seeing these coordinates?" Elena's fingers moved swiftly across her suit's interface, mapping the strange numerical sequence. "They're pointing to Earth, specifically the Pacific Ocean." Another eternal pause. Then, "Dr. Santos, we're detecting some kind of energy signature from the monolith. It's activating." The surface of the ancient stone began to shimmer, its dark surface taking on a subtle iridescence. Elena stepped back, her suit's sensors screaming warnings about unknown radiation signatures. The symbol started to pulse with a deep blue light. That's when she heard it, not through her communication system, but directly in her mind. A voice that felt ancient and vast, speaking in concepts more than words. "We are the archivists. You have found our marker. The time of revelation approaches." Elena's vision swam as information flooded her consciousness. Images of impossible geometries, glimpses of civilizations that rose and fell before Earth formed, and through it all, a persistent warning about something sleeping in Earth's oceans, something that needed to stay asleep. "Control," she managed to whisper, "we're going to need a bigger research grant." The response from Earth was drowned out by another psychic transmission. "Your species guards the veil without knowing. Your chaos maintains the seals. But the deep stirs, and the unconscious guardianship must become conscious." The next 24 hours became a blur of activity. Research teams across the solar system reported similar activations at every site where the symbols had been discovered. The scientific community erupted into chaos as the impossible implications became clear. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe. They never had been. They were simply the latest in a long line of species chosen for a task they never knew they had. In her temporary hab unit on Mars, Elena pored over the data streaming in from sites across the solar system. The archivists, as they called themselves, had left more than warnings. They'd left a history of Earth that no human had ever known. Long before the first fish crawled onto land, Earth had been chosen. Its unique position in space-time, its volatile geological activity, and most importantly, Its potential to produce conscious life made it the perfect prison for something ancient, something that existed in dimensions beyond human comprehension. The various alien civilizations hadn't avoided Earth out of disinterest or fear of humanity. They'd stayed away because humanity was doing exactly what they were supposed to do, creating enough chaos and unpredictability to maintain dimensional barriers that kept the universe safe. As Elena prepared her preliminary report for Earth's Scientific Council, she couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Humanity's greatest strengths, their unpredictability, their chaos, their stubborn refusal to follow cosmic rules, were exactly what made them perfect guardians of reality itself. But now, as the archivist's messages made clear, being unconscious guardians was no longer enough. Something was stirring in the deep, and humanity needed to wake up to their true purpose before it did. The real question was, how do you tell 7 billion people they've been reality's bodyguards without knowing it? Elena looked at the final lines of her report and added a note. Recommendation: begin deep-sea exploration of coordinates immediately. But for the love of all that's sane, do it quietly. We don't want to wake anything up before we know what we're dealing with. She hadn't realized then just how impossible that last request would prove to be. The truth beneath, the Mariana Trench research vessel Odyssey cut through the Pacific waves like a blade, its advanced sensors probing the darkness below. In the ship's main laboratory, Dr. Elena Santos stared at readings that made absolutely no sense, which, given everything that had happened in the past month, meant they were probably exactly right. The quantum fluctuations are off the charts, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's quantum physicist, reported. Her fingers danced across holographic displays as she analyzed the data. It's as if reality itself is thinner down there. Elena nodded, remembering the archivist's warning. After her discovery on Mars, she'd been fast-tracked to lead Earth's first official investigation into what lay beneath the waves. The UN had managed to keep the full truth under wraps. For now, as far as the public knew, this was just another deep-sea research mission. Dr. Santos, a voice called from the communication station. The archivists are requesting contact again. Elena moved to the specially designed interface chamber, a room lined with quantum-sensitive crystals that somehow facilitated communication with their ancient advisors. As she entered, the air shimmed with that now familiar iridescence. The seals weakened, the thoughts materialized in her mind. Your species' natural entropy has maintained them for millennia, but the sleeper grows restless. It tests its bounds. What exactly are we guarding? Elena asked the emptiness. You've told us about our role, but not what we're keeping contained. The response came in images rather than words, glimpses of something vast and impossible, a being that existed in geometries that human minds couldn't process. Elena's nose began to bleed as her brain struggled to interpret what she was seeing. Before time as you know it, there were others. They'd reshaped reality to their will, bent dimensions like you bend paper. In their arrogance, they tore the fabric of existence. What sleeps beneath your oceans is their legacy, a thing of pure chaos that would unmake everything if released. The ship's alarm system suddenly blared to life. Elena rushed back to the main lab, where the crew gathered around the primary display. The ocean beneath them was flickering. It's like space-time hiccups, Yuki explained, her voice tense. For a fraction of a second, that section of water simply doesn't exist in our dimension. Before Elena could respond, every electronic device on the ship went haywire. Screens displayed impossible colors, sensors reported readings in negative numbers, and for 3 terrifying seconds, gravity seemed to work sideways. Then, just as suddenly, everything returned to normal. The crew stood in stunned silence until a burst of laughter broke the tension. Dr. James Chen, their marine biologist, was looking at his coffee cup, which had somehow ended up perfectly balanced on a wall. Well, he said, carefully retrieving it, at least we know why coffee never tastes right in the middle of the ocean. Reality's a bit wobbly out here. That simple joke, That very human response to the impossible seemed to stabilize more than just the crew's nerves. Alina watched in fascination as the quantum readings suddenly normalized. Somehow, that moment of purely human chaos had strengthened the dimensional barriers. The archivist's presence filled the ship. Now you begin to understand. Your species' greatest power is not your technology or your intelligence. It is your ability to face the impossible and respond with irreverence. Each joke, each irrational action, each moment of beautiful chaos creates ripples that strengthen the veil. Over the next few days, they documented more anomalies. Sometimes, the water would age 1,000 years in an instant. Other times, fish would swim backward through time. But each time something impossible happened, the crew's increasingly absurd reactions seemed to stabilize things. Alina was compiling her findings when Yuki burst into her cabin, excitement written across her face. "You need to see this," she said, projecting a complex diagram into the air. "I've been analyzing the pattern of anomalies against human activity worldwide. There's a direct correlation between dimensional stability and human unpredictability." The hologram showed a global map with flowing patterns of energy. Every major city glowed with a unique signature, quantum stability maintained by millions of humans going about their chaotic daily lives. "Look at this," Yuki continued, highlighting specific areas. Music festivals, sports events, any large gathering of humans being, well, human. They all strengthen the dimensional barriers. We're not just guardians. We're reality's immune system. Before Alina could respond, the ship's AI announced an incoming priority transmission from the UN Security Council. The message was brief but devastating. Similar research vessels had detected dimensional anomalies at other oceanic locations. The Mariana Trench wasn't unique. It was just the beginning. As Alina prepared to brief the world's leaders, she received one final message from the archivists. "The sleeper stirs more strongly. Soon, unconscious guardianship will not be enough. Humanity must learn to wield its chaos consciously, or reality itself will unravel." "No pressure," Alina muttered, reaching for her own cup of dimensionally questionable coffee. "We just need to teach humanity to weaponize its weirdness." She didn't know it yet, but the universe was about to discover exactly how good humans were at weaponizing anything, even their own chaos. The first breach. It began with a tweet. "Lol, wide is the ocean doing a Windows 95 screensaver." The attached video showed a section of the Pacific Ocean fragmenting into geometric patterns that shouldn't be possible in nature. Within hours, similar reports flooded social media from coastal regions worldwide. Reality was beginning to crack, and humanity was responding with memes. In the UN's hastily assembled Dimensional Crisis Center, Dr. Alina Santos watched the situation unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. The holographic displays showed a cascade of dimensional anomalies spreading from the Mariana Trench, each one more impossible than the last. "The barriers are failing faster than predicted," Yuki announced, her fingers flying over multiple interfaces. "But look at this." She highlighted a curious pattern in the data. Every time someone posts a joke about it online, the quantum fluctuations actually stabilize for a moment. Alina remembered the archivist's words about human chaos being a stabilizing force. "It's not enough though, is it?" Before Yuki could answer, every screen in the crisis center flickered. For a fraction of a second, they showed something else. Images of a reality where angles worked differently, where cause followed effect, where the very concepts of space and time were more like suggestions than laws. The archivist's presence filled the room. The first true breach approaches. How humanity responds in the next few hours will determine if they are ready for their true role. As if on cue, the main display lit up with urgent warnings. A massive dimensional tear was forming in the Pacific, right above the Mariana Trench. The readings were off the charts. Reality itself was being pulled apart like tissue paper. Traditional military forces scrambled to respond, but how do you fight a hole in reality? Conventional weapons were worse than useless. They actually seemed to strengthen whatever was trying to break through. That's when humanity did what it did best. something completely unexpected. A civilian cruise ship, the Paradise Dream, was the closest vessel to the breach. Instead of evacuating, the ship's DJ started blasting music at maximum volume. Passengers, either too drunk or too excited to be properly terrified, began having an impromptu party on the deck. The quantum readings immediately shifted. "This is incredible," Yuki breathed, staring at her instruments. "The sheer randomness of human celebration. It's creating a kind of quantum static that's interfering with the breach." Taking their cue from the cruise ship, coastal cities began organizing immediate beach parties. Impromptu concerts sprang up along shorelines. Someone started a viral challenge to outweird the weird, resulting in thousands of people doing increasingly absurd things near dimensional anomalies. Each act of human chaos seemed to strengthen the fabric of reality. The breach began to shrink, not through force or technology, but through humanity's unique ability to turn anything, even an interdimensional crisis, into an excuse to party. In the crisis center, Alina watched as social media exploded with breach-related memes. Someone had already created a dance trend called the reality shuffle, supposedly based on the way space-time was wavering. The quantum readings stabilized further with each shared video. "Now you understand," the archivists communicated. "Your species' gift is not just chaos. It is joyful chaos. The ability to face the impossible and respond with celebration. This is why you were chosen." The breach finally sealed completely when a group of college students organized a flash mob directly above it, performing a choreographed dance that somehow incorporated quantum physics equations into the moves. The sheer improbability of the event seemed to overwhelm the terror in reality, forcing it closed. But even as the immediate crisis passed, Alina knew this was just the beginning. The barriers between dimensions were weakening globally. Humanity's unconscious guardianship had worked for millions of years, but now they needed to take active control of their role. Dr. Santos, a UN official, approached her station. "The Security Council is requesting guidance. How do we prepare for the next breach?" Alina looked at the data from the cruise ship incident, then at the still-trending reality shuffle videos. A plan was forming in her mind, one so crazy it just might work. "Tell them we need to organize the biggest party in human history," she said, "and get me every quantum physicist who knows how to dance. We're going to weaponize fun." The official stared at her like she'd lost her mind, which Alina took as a good sign. If her idea seemed insane, it was probably exactly what they needed. As she began drafting her proposal for what would later be known as Operation Dance Dance Reality, the archivists left her with one final thought. The sleeper stirs more strongly now. It senses the barriers weakening. What comes next will test humanity's chaos in ways never before seen. Alina cracked her knuckles and pulled up a playlist. If they were going to save reality with the power of partying, they were going to need better music. The Great Defense. The problem with saving reality through the power of chaos, Dr. Alina Santos reflected, was that you couldn't exactly plan for it. That was rather the point. 3 months after the first breach, humanity had transformed itself into something unprecedented, a civilization of conscious reality anchors. The UN's Dimensional Stability Department, nicknamed the Party Planning Committee, had centers on every continent, each one a strange hybrid of scientific laboratory and entertainment venue. "We've got another cluster forming off the coast of Mumbai," Yuki announced, her workstation now decorated with disco balls that doubled as quantum sensors. "And the Antarctic breach is acting up again." Alina studied the global holographic display, watching the swirling patterns of dimensional instability. The breaches were appearing more frequently now, but humanity had learned to adapt with remarkable speed. It turned out that when you told people their weird hobbies could literally save the universe, they really leaned into it. "Launch the response teams," Alina ordered. "And someone please tell the Antarctic Research Station to turn down their reality-stabilizing punk rock. It's affecting our readings in Chile." The archivists materialized in their usual shower of impossible colors. Your species continues to surprise us. Never before has a guardian race embraced their role with such enthusiasm. Elena watched as Mumbai's breach was contained by a combination of Bollywood flash mobs and quantum-tuned music festivals. The Antarctic team, a group of physicists who had discovered that mosh pits generated particularly strong reality-stabilizing fields, had their breach under control within minutes. But something was different this time. The quantum readings weren't returning to normal after containment. If anything, they were getting worse. Dr. Santos, a junior researcher, burst into the command center. "You need to see this. We've been analyzing the pattern of breaches, and they're not random. They're forming a shape." The holographic display shifted, showing the global pattern of dimensional tiers from a new perspective. Elena felt her blood run cold. The breaches were indeed creating a pattern, a massive planet-spanning seal. The sleeper attempts to break its bonds entirely, the archivists confirmed. It seeks to use the very chaos you wield against the barriers themselves. "Then we need more chaos," Elena declared, but controlled chaos. Directed unpredictability. She opened a global channel to all DSD centers. "This is Dr. Santos. We're initiating Operation Pandemonium. Full spectrum reality reinforcement, effective immediately." What followed would later be described by historians as the day Earth went beautifully insane. Every nation, every culture, every community contributed their own unique brand of controlled chaos to the effort. In Japan, robot dance battles incorporated quantum uncertainty principles. Indian classical dancers performed with probability waves. Brazilian carnival parades became rolling waves of reality reinforcement. Even the most serious institutions joined in. The Vatican choir collaborated with heavy metal bands to create quantum harmonic resonance. Artificial intelligence systems, programmed to analyze the effectiveness of different chaos-generating activities, began producing increasingly bizarre recommendations. One AI suggested that the most stable quantum fields were generated by groups of grandmothers, telling increasingly improbable stories while knitting climb models. But the entity beneath the waves was learning, adapting. Each time humanity found a new way to stabilize reality, it would shift its approach. The breaches began appearing in patterns that counteracted human chaos, using logic and order as weapons. That's when Dr. James Chen, still carrying his now famous gravity-defying coffee cup, had an idea. "We're thinking about this wrong," he announced during an emergency session. "We're trying to out-chaos chaos. But what's more chaotic than unexpected order?" Elena watched in amazement as Chen orchestrated what he called malicious compliance with reality. Extremely ordered activities performed at exactly the wrong moment and place. Flash mobs that appeared in perfect formation, but danced to completely different songs. Choirs that sang everything precisely one note off-key. The quantum readings went haywire. The being beneath the waves, expecting pure chaos, found its efforts disrupted by pockets of jarring order. "Remarkable," the archivists observed. "Your species has learned to weaponize not just chaos, but the very concept of expectation itself." The global pattern of breaches began to destabilize. Humanity's new strategy of tactical inappropriateness was working. But as Elena studied the readings, she realized they were still missing something crucial. "The breaches," she muttered, "they're not just a pattern. They're a message." She began feeding the data through every translation matrix they had, including the ones used to decode the original archivist warnings. What emerged sent chills down her spine. The message was simple, but terrifying. "Realiasi as ineitable. Chaos cannot kg ordior forever." "Well," Elena said, addressing her team and the watching archivists, "it's a good thing we humans are really, really bad at accepting inevitability." As she prepared to brief the world's leaders on this new development, alerts began blaring across every monitoring station. The readings were unlike anything they'd seen before. Every breach, every dimensional tear, every quantum anomaly was suddenly, impossibly, acting in perfect synchronization. The final battle for reality was about to begin, and humanity would need more than just chaos to win it. They would need to prove why they, out of all possible species, had been chosen as reality's guardians. The entity had made its move. Now it was humanity's turn to respond, and their response would either save the universe or unmake it entirely. The Guardians awaken. The oceans of Earth had stopped moving. All of them. Simultaneously. Dr. Elena Santos stood at the window of the Dimensional Crisis Center, watching the unnaturally still Atlantic Ocean below. The silence was deafening. No waves, no movement, just a perfect mirror reflecting a sky that couldn't seem to decide what color it wanted to be. "Well," Dr. Chen said, standing beside her with his quantum-stabilized coffee cup, "I guess this is what happens when an interdimensional entity decides to stop being subtle." The global quantum readings had gone beyond merely alarming. According to every instrument they had, reality itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. The final confrontation approaches. The archivists manifested, their usual shimmer now an urgent pulse of energy. The sleeper has gathered its strength. It will attempt to impose perfect order upon chaos itself. Elena turned from the window to face the assembled global response team. The holographic displays showed the same impossible stillness across every ocean on Earth. More disturbing were the readings from beneath the waves, patterns of energy that formed perfect, fractal geometries of increasing complexity. "It's beautiful," Yuki whispered, studying the patterns. "Terrifying, but beautiful. Pure mathematical order on a quantum scale." That's when Elena understood. "It's not trying to break out," she said slowly. "It's trying to break everything. Perfect order, perfect predictability. It would collapse all possibility into a single, unchanging state. The heat death of the universe," Chen realized. "But achieved through order rather than entropy." The archivist's presence intensified. "Yes, this is why chaos must be preserved. Why humanity's gift is so vital. You bring uncertainty, possibility, change. You break patterns simply by existing." Before Elena could respond, every screen in the facility began displaying the same message, repeating in every language. "Surrender to ingenuity. Tla. Embrace perfection. Chaos must end." And then, in every ocean, at the exact same moment, the water began to move. Not in waves or currents, but in perfect geometric patterns, like a global display of synchronized swimming choreographed by a mad mathematician. Humanity's response was, characteristically, to completely ignore the suggestion of surrender. "You know what's really chaotic?" Elena asked, a plan forming in her mind. "Organization. But too much of it, applied inappropriately, by people who are really, really bad at it." She opened a global channel. "This is Dr. Santos. To all response teams, initialize Operation Beautiful Disaster." Across the planet, humanity began to organize. Badly, intentionally badly. Flash mobs appeared with everyone doing the right moves at slightly different times. Choirs sang in perfect harmony to different songs. People began filing their taxes with technically correct but maximally confusing methods. The quantum readings went berserk. The entity's perfect patterns began to show signs of strain as they encountered pockets of malicious order that refused to fit into its calculations. But it wasn't enough. The geometric patterns in the oceans continued to spread, now beginning to affect the land. Cities found their streets rearranging into perfect grids. Plants began growing in fractally perfect patterns. "Your resistance is noted," a new voice echoed in everyone's minds. "But order cannot be defeated by imperfect order." "No," Elena agreed, watching the patterns spread. "But that's not what we're trying to do." She opened another global channel. "All teams, Phase 2. Operation Human Nature." Across the planet, people stopped trying to organize anything. Instead, they simply began being intensely, authentically human. Children ignored the perfectly arranged playgrounds to build improbable structures out of mud and sticks. Artists abandoned symmetry to create works of pure emotion. Scientists began asking what-if questions that violated every known law of physics. Every human on Earth embraced their fundamental nature: to wonder, to create, to defy expectation, not through intention, but through simply being themselves. The effect was immediate. The geometric patterns began to falter, encountering something they couldn't predict or control. Genuine, unforced human chaos. Impossible, the entity thundered. Chaos cannot defeat order. We're not defeating order, Elena responded, watching as reality itself seemed to take a deep breath. We're reminding it why it needs us. The archivist's presence merged with the moment. Now you understand. This was never about containment. It was about balance. The geometric patterns across the planet began to shift, not breaking, but dancing. Order and chaos, pattern and possibility, all moving in a complex harmony that had nothing to do with control and everything to do with choice. The entity's voice returned, but different now, almost wondering. You choose chaos when perfection is offered. Every single time, Elena confirmed. Because without chaos, without change, without the possibility of something new, what's the point of existing at all? There was a moment of perfect silence. Then, like a global exhalation, every ocean on Earth resumed its natural movement. The geometric patterns didn't vanish. They merged with the natural chaos of wind and wave and human whimsy, creating something entirely new. We understand now. The entity and the archivist spoke as one. This was the test, not of containment, but of growth. You were never meant to be guards, but teachers. Elena looked out at the ocean, now moving with a beauty that combined both pattern and possibility. So what happens now? Now, the voices replied. Now we learn from each other. Order and chaos, pattern and possibility, all in balance. This is what reality was always meant to be. As the sun set on this new world, Elena watched humans already adapting to their new reality. Quantum physicists were surfing on probability waves. Mathematicians were discovering equations that somehow incorporated uncertainty as a fundamental constant. Artists were creating works that existed in multiple states simultaneously. You know what the really crazy thing is? Chen said, somehow still holding that same cup of coffee. This is probably the most normal thing humanity has ever done. How do you figure that? He grinned. We took a universe-ending crisis and turned it into an opportunity to make everything more interesting. That's basically humanity's entire history in one sentence. Elena laughed, and somewhere in the quantum fabric of reality, both order and chaos laughed with her. The universe had changed forever, but then again, thanks to humanity, it had never really stopped changing. And that, after all, was exactly the point.